Hello, everybody, and welcome here to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Delighted to have you on board. This is all about wine education, helping you get much more enjoyment from the wonderful world of wine. Now, the series we're about to look at is something really deep dive called the Mastering Germany series. And this is a free video available on my YouTube channel, but in fact, it's a part of a series with many more exclusive videos that are only available on my Wine with Jimmy Club. This is a monthly subscription service for less than a cup of coffee a month, $3.99. It gives you huge amounts of access of additional videos, lots of series. You might find the likes of wines of Armenia, wines of Georgia, food and wine pairings, and lots of deep dives as well as professional tasting notes. Lots of goodies there to be found. You can cancel at any time, but click on the link below, go there and sign up and see what you like. So let's crack on with Mastering Germany, talking about the Rheingau area. And we're now going to be talking about the central west Rheingau. So what I do, following on from part 4, is we're moving from the east of the Rheingau, places like Vicker, Hochheim, past Wiesbaden. We were visiting Woluwe, places like Eltville, Kietrich, for example. We're now going into the sort of central to central western part of the Rheingau. So let's have a look at the map to put that into perspective for you. So let's have a look. Sorry, it's not moving, but let's do it this way. So we currently moved in video 4, we moved all the way along this gray area, but we're now doing this part. We're actually not focusing on Lorch and Assmannhausen. That will be actually on a later video, the video that is after this one. So this, what we call the central west part. Now, the reason why I'm not getting it split into official sections is because there's actually only one Bereich or wine district of the Rheingau. So it is not split into multiple sections like other regions like Franken or Württemberg, for example. So we're going to come to our place in that highlighted area, which was to the far right-hand side. So this is really quite central Rheingau location. And it's an area called Hallgarten. And it's home to the highest vineyards in the whole of the Rheingau. And they sit just below the imposing Hallgartener Zange, which is almost a 600-meter mountain hill, nearly 2,000 feet. This rocky outcrop towers over the Rhine Valley. Now, in the old days, when we certainly were in the likes of the Little Ice Age, 1500 to say 1800s, these higher slopes were always thought to be far too high and cold for Riesling. But of course, with the warm snap we're in, and it's more than a snap, climate change has certainly meant that this site is now highly prized. Let's have a look at where we're focusing on. We're going to talk about Schönhell and also Jungfer. They're the two sites immediately to the southern part of Hallgarten. And there is actually some Jungfer towards the north as well. So there is Hallgarten. There are some of the Jungfer vines. Jungfer, as I mentioned, is a site that has always been known for brightness, and that's quite important for the modern style of Rheingau. One could argue that Rheingau always had the upper hand when climate was cooler, producing the richest style Rieslings in the whole of Germany. But as time has gone on and climate change has really ramped up, it's now getting often too warm in places. So these cooler sites are important. Jungfer has phyllite, slate, quartzite, and loessy loam soils. You get good ripeness here, but beautiful, bright marked acidity, which really enables great aging. There's a label from Prinz. And then below that, you have Schönhell. Schönhell, which there is Hallgarten again. Schönhell is this kind of L shape just here. This is at about 200 meters. That's about 660 feet. And the forest on the northern side shields many of the sites around Hallgarten from cold winds. It's loessy loam, clay and sandy gravel. And in the right producer's idea and philosophy, it can give really structured, juicy Rieslings with often stone-fruited expressions. We now come to the next village down, which is Oestrich. Oestrich. Oestrich was a wealthy merchant town in the late medieval ages, and you will notice that actually with a lot of the villas that adorn its waterfront. The town landmark is a wine loading crane, and that was built on the riverbank in the early 18th century. And until 1924, wine barrels were hoisted onto ships by prisoners who walked treadmills inside the crane to power its pulley. A little bit, I suppose, like a hamster's wheel. Now, you'll see from that map, we are looking at two extensive areas, Doosberg and Lenchen. Doosberg and Lenchen are the two areas, either side of a small road, and they are exceptionally sizable. So Doosberg, first of all, here you go. We're actually looking, if we go back to the previous slide, we're looking at the bend here. So we are looking from the southwest into the whole of the Doosberg site. There you go, just here, just north of the railway line. So this is a gentle slope of deep loamy gravel and loess over clay, loam and quartzite. The vineyard is relatively close to the river and it has a decent airflow from that. But really the wines here are quite full-bodied, I think quite typical structured style Rheingau Rieslings that can have a good aging potential. Lenchen is equally as big as we mentioned before. So let's move on to it. So very sizable. It rolls again south to southeast with deep loessy loam and sand, but there's some more iron-rich marl and quartzite here. Rieslings predominate. There's a little bit more aromatic spiciness to the wines. There is also a single site which is called the Lenchen Eisenberg. And Lenchen Eisenberg is a small strip of vines running perpendicular to the Rhine on a rare patch of iron-rich red sandstone called Rotlegendes, which is that same soil type that you get in parts of the Nahe, but majorly in the Rothenberg of the Rhine-Hessen and other parts of the Rhine-Hessen. The wines here are savoury, broad, but salty. Sweet wines are famous here too. And in 1920, the grower Joseph Spritzer harvested a Trockenbeeren Auslese from its site at 303° Oechsle, which is a record held for 7 decades. It's very well known today, this site, for Spätlese. The next town down is past Mittelheim, and then you're in Winkel, and we'll look immediately to the north of Winkel with Schlossberg and Hasensprung. Winkel is very old. It has an excavated Bronze Age pit which testify to its age. And there are structures dating here between the 7th and 9th centuries uncovered, including the Graus House, which is Grey House, thought to be the oldest stone residence in Germany, likely built in the 11th century. So we first talk about the, sorry, I need to move this, the Hasensprung. Let me move on, sorry, here you go. This is 3 large contiguous parcels sloping gently towards the Rhine, facing south and southwest. Deep, heavy loessy loam and clay gives these lush, rounded style Rieslings, I think, once again, fairly typical of the area. Next up is the Winkel Schlossberg, or otherwise known as the Winkel Schloss Vollrads Schlossberg, which is a dramatic mouthful for the best of us. So this is one of several vineyards called Schlossberg. There are loads of them in Germany. And Winkel's Schlossberg consists of 2 parcels. Soils are sandy loam and quartzite, south-southwest. And the Rieslings tend to be quite powerful. And you'll see Schloss Vollrads, an iconic producer, here is the producer of the Schlossberg. We then come to the famous university town of Geisenheim. Geisenheim is important for understanding the landscape, research, innovation, creation, certainly for the Hochschule Geisenheim University. The university actually also has its own vineyards that experiments, trials, and has a huge impact in the development of clonal research in Rieslings. This village is also the home of the famous estate which turned religious, that Schloss Johannesburg. The major site which we're highlighting here, just tucked into really an area within Geisenheim, is Rothenberg. And Rothenberg was first documented in 1145. It's fairly steep. You'll see from the picture here, hopefully. Sorry, let me get it up. There you go. There's Geisenheim. Here is the fairly steep slope on the top of a hill. So you've got soil here, which is quartzite, some iron oxide rich slate, which gives it its name of Red Mountain. Rothenberg means Red Mountain. And you get really ripe expressions of Riesling here. Since 2005, this was put into scientific data because Rothenberg wines have set 3 German records for must weights. In 2011, Trockenbeeren Auslesers with degrees of Oechsler of 259 degrees Oechsler, 319 degree Oechsler, and 340 degree Oechsler were harvested here. So the wines are typically dry, for really full-bodied and tropical, and the sweet wines are very complex, and Geisenheim has holdings here as well. Rüdesheim is our final foray into the landscape. And this is an area which is famed for the Rüdesheimer Berg, which is the deep, steep cliffs that cut into, or rather the river has cut into it, which really confines the town to really a narrow strip of streets. The town itself is gorgeous. It's crowded with wine producers and cellars and shops, restaurants. It's often packed with tourists. Vineyards exquisitely adorn around it, going into those steep slopes. They're some of the steepest in the Rheingau. Most of them were restructured by Flyover in the 1960s and 70s to make them more accessible. Rieslings are known here to be dry, tropical, lush, and spicy, but there's also sweet wines produced here as well. There's also a little bit of Spätburgunder. Let's talk about probably the least well-known, which is the far western here, Berg Kaisersteinfels. And here it is, hopefully, yeah, Berg Kaisersteinfels. So this perch is fairly high, 220 meters above the Rhine. It's partly terraced, as you'll see here, and it's on rocky quartzite with some red slate. The wine gives good intensity here and good concentration, and lights, you'll see a bottling from there. Then we have Berg Rottland, an extensive site, the largest Einzellager on the Rüdesheimer hill. And this is really a great place for a myriad of Rieslings in quite a lot of different expressions. The Roseneck is next. This is a sheltered south-facing slope. They're all south-fated, slightly amphitheatical, and it's on a steeper sites of the Rheingau. It's parallel to the river, and the western portion towards the Kaisersteinfels is more rocky slate and quartzite, and the eastern part is a bit flatter on deep Loess and loam. We know that wine has been made here for about 800 years, and they tend to be today lush, dense, and juicy. The final one is Berg Schlossberg. They're seen famous for its 13th century castle at its heart, which is an absolute hallmark of Rheingau. It's very steep, you'll see there. It's sort of 50–60% in places. And it's really Rüdesheim and the Rheingau at its most extreme. It's weathered slate and quartzite that hold warmth but not water. Drought is an issue here, and several producers craft brilliant Schlossberg Rüdesheimer wines. Okay, let's take a look at this Google Earth video for the part of the Rheingau, which is in the center towards the westerly point. So as always, have a quick look at the Rheingau in blue there on the widest point of the Rhine as it heads on its from east to west direction, which is, of course, because of the reason of the Taunus Hills that you'll see there, the Taunus Mountains, which stop it from traveling north and kind of putting on a detour. We are going to look at the big city in the middle first, Wiesbaden, which sits on the north, quite an industrious area. And then we're going to focus on Hallgarten. Hallgarten is home to the highest vineyards in the Rheingau. They perch just below the nearly 2,000-foot Hallgartener Zanger, which is a rocky outcrop here. And the vineyard we'll look at here is the Jungfer, which has phyllite slay, quartzite, and loess. Real ripe style, great aging capability. There's also the vineyard of Schönhell as well, perched at around 200 meters, 650 feet. And that's in red, as you'll see there. Heavy loess loam, clay, and sandy gravel. Floral but rounded expressions here, and it's kind of an up-and-coming location. Then we have the village of Oestrich, which is a real key area as a wealthy merchant town in the 17th and 18th century. And you have a number of vineyards, and fairly large as well. Here's the one in blue, Doosberg. Massive site here. Riesling is full-bodied but vibrant, and they can age. And next to it is also quite large, which is Lenchen. And this rolls south-southeast to the Rhine on loamy loam soils and a bit of quartzite and iron-rich marl. It's on an aquifer as well, and Riesling, of course, is the major grape variety. Another one is a single parcel, the Eiserberg, that you'll see just here, on a rare patch of iron-rich Rotlegendes. Noble sweet wines have been cultivated here, and the record Trockenbirch and Auslese, 303 Uxler recorded from there. Then the village of Winkel. We're going to go to the Hasensprung vineyard, which has 3 large parcels. You'll see really dotted to the north and to the west of the village. And this has loam, loess, clay, big sort of luscious Rieslings from there. And then the Schloss Vollrads Schlossberg, which is another key site, slightly more higher acidity here due to its altitude. Now to the famous, real famous towns, the key town of Geisenheim with its world-class school of viticulture and enology, the Hochschule Geisenheim University. And it has the site of Rothenberg, first documented in 1145. Quartzite, iron-rich slate, and this means red mountain. Set here as well for top wines ripeness. Then the village of Rüdesheim, beautiful, very tourist-led, lots of Weinguts, lots of shops and bars and restaurants. And the big sites here, you've got, first of all, the Berg Kaisersteinfels, you'll see there, mixed with forests at about 220 meters. Good concentration, but quite bright expression. Berg Rottland is the largest of Rüdesheim that you'll see here in orange. Rieslings are key here, and you'll find these quite commonly around the world due to its size. Next up, Berg Roseneck is sheltered south-facing amphitheatre type, and it's parallel to the river, so you'll see it just there. We've had cultivation here since the 1200s, and it dates all the way back as well, we think, to the times of Charlemagne, locating some key sites here. Look at the castle here, the Rüdesheimer Schloss, which is the ruins that we find. And then we have our final site of Berg Schlossberg, which is around those ruins. And it's really Rüdesheim at its most extreme, very steep slopes as it goes down to the Rhine River. Wow, what a location. That brings me to the conclusion of that part 5. Please join me for part 6 as we go round the bend, the Bingen Bend, and head north as we go down the Rhine River to places such as Assmannshausen, Lorch and Lorchhausen. If you wish to join that and you haven't subscribed already, you'll need to go and subscribe to the Wine with Jimmy Club to gain access, as it's an exclusive video. There's lots of extra goodies on the Wine with Jimmy Club for all $3.99 a month, which is dirt cheap, less than a cup of coffee. Dankeschön, and thank you very much. And until next time, I've been Jimmy.